Hey fellas, welcome to part 5 of HobbyBoss's 1/18 scale Harrier build. In this non-exciting episode, I tackle the intakes. I debated on whether to do this, and I just wouldn't have been happy if I didn't correct the intakes, and they may not be corrected to 100% accuracy, but I do improve them a lot over just the basic kit part. So yeah, I'm devoting a whole episode just to the intakes. When I started it, I knew it was going to take a while. It took me about a week just to get the intakes taken care of and get that all squared away. And I knew it was going to take a while, but I just couldn't live with myself if I didn't do it. Anyway, I'll quit yapping and let's go take a look at what I'm going to do in this video. All right, fellas. You guys want to see me create a lot of work for myself? All right, let's take a look at what we got going on. So, one of the cool things about the Harrier is the way the intakes look. Now, this is the way the kit would have you put it together. Now, there is a gap along where this inner ring is supposed to meet up with this. So I'm going to have to take care of that anyway, but the sides of the cockpit, let me pull this apart so you can get a good look at it. They just stop right here. Now in the real thing, this comes around and then there's a big, I don't know, like flared flange that goes around the spinner on the intake. And this kit obviously doesn't have that. So I'm gonna try to correct this. And I'm gonna cut right along this panel line right here and try to build up with plastic card and wrap it around so there's you'll actually be able to see it when you look to the side, because right now there's just nothing in there. So this is going to be very complicated because I have to adjust and cut and make everything look seamless as it meets up with the intake thing here. So this is going to be a big pain in the butt. I've been debating on whether or not to even do it. But I don't think I'm going to be happy with this build unless I at least make an attempt. So I know once I start it, no matter how big of a pain in the ass it is, that I'll eventually get it done. It's just I'm not exactly sure how to go about it. So I'm going to get to cutting this part and just kind of go from there. So yeah, I'll see you in a bit after I go to the go past the point of no return on this. See you in a sec. Alrighty, so I've got the little pieces cut out here on each side, and you can see I've replaced it. So I just basically went right along this panel line and cut this out. And what I've done is I went ahead and made some structural support in here with some .020 plastic card, as you can see here on both sides. And then I just take another .020 plastic card and I cut a little bit oversized piece. There's a little bit of a curve right there, a convex curve. And that's going to allow this to fit up nice and snug to my panel line right here. And you can see it's straight, but when you bend it and angle it, it needs to be cut in a slightly convex shape. So I've got a piece cut out here, and I'll lay it down, and just to give you an idea of what we're looking at. Now this is pretty much a rough cut, so I'm gonna have to do a lot of filling. Let's see, I'll probably have to take some off of here, it looks like. And this is I'm doing this as kind of like a trial and error. So it's gonna be a lot of test fitting, and I don't want to have to do a lot of filling in. But I know I'm going to have to, but I want to try to get it as close as I can. Well, that didn't quite work out, did it? Alright, it needs to be cut at a steeper angle. Let's get my little ruler out. and we'll cut this at a little bit steeper of an angle. Now, I didn't have the best cuts right along the bottom part here. And you can see instead of cutting straight down, I did leave a little bit of this down here because when you fit it up to the fuselage, that part is still showing. So I went ahead and left that part. And that would be just less that I'd have to fill in, okay? I think that's gonna be close enough. I am gonna have to do some filling. I'm obviously gonna have to do some sanding. So I think that will be good enough for the girls that I go with. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is grab a couple pieces of tape. And I'm going to attach this right up against here as best that I can. And line it up and then tape it. Then I'm going to lift this up and I'm going to take my sprue goo, my sprue mixed with Tamiya Extra Thin, and I'm going to liberally apply this to these sections here. Basically to my, this is gonna be a mess. Put it in here, dab a little bit on. And again, I'm being pretty liberal with this. I just want to join this exterior panel that I created here to my support structure. And rather than using Tamiya Extra Thin, which is going to evaporate too quickly, I'm going to use this and this sprue goo because it's basically just melted plastic. So I'm just adding more plastic just in a melted form to not only act as a glue, but to add a little bit more structural support and a little more grab. I probably could have used thicker styrene on here, but I just like the 0.020 thickness because it is easier to work with, easier to cut, easier to deal with. Okay, so now I will close this up, and I'm not really worried about this edge. I really just want to get this tamped down to my structural support. So then I will just hold it on here like this, and I'll probably have to wait 5 or 6 minutes for this to really bite into the plastic and to cure up. And then I can go along and I can start gluing in around my seams and filling in so I can get it nice and snug and nice and tight everywhere. So that's basically how I'm doing this. It is rather complicated. It is taking me a little bit of trial and error and a little bit of cutting and filling, but eventually I think I'll get there. So that's how I'm doing it. All right, fellas, I'm on the downhill slide of this intake debacle. Now, overall, it wasn't that hard to do. It just took a little bit of time. So I, like you saw before, I need to sand that a little bit right there. But as you saw before, I laid down the 0.020 plastic card. And it is rather thin, so you kind of have to be careful with your glue. Because as you see right here, I've got a couple little divots where it caved in when I used the sprue goo to glue it down to my structure on the inside. Not that big of a deal, but you just have to be careful when you use that thin stuff. And the reason that I wanted to use the thin stuff, I didn't mention this before, it's a little bit easier to work with, and I wanted it to be able to flow and conform because it had to fit around this area right back here. So I couldn't use a real hard stiff piece because I wanted to be able to bend it and curve it a little bit. So it's got a nice flow to it. The back end, this flange, what I did is I cut out some circular shapes and put them on the, glued them to the back here. And then I just used my Magic Sculpt 2-part epoxy. and molded in this flange. I thought that would be a little bit easier than trying to do that with plastic card. And it's a little rough right now, but I'm gonna spray it down with some Mr. Surfacer 1000 and sand it and get everything nice and smooth and straight. But overall, the form is there, and I think it's gonna look pretty good. Now, I've been matching it up to make sure that this covered the area that I needed to cover to get my diameter back here. So I think I'm good there. Another big issue that I'm running into, or that I did run into, was these outside pieces of the intake. Now, the kit has you glue them onto the, and I'll show this here in a minute, has you glue these onto the other part of the kit, and then they just meet up here. Well, before I even cut these off, there was a gap that I think I showed before between the edges of these and the fuselage. And so I knew I was going to have to correct those anyway, but with even but because I altered this part and made it deeper, I had to add a little bit more. So I just took some plastic card, glued it onto the ends, and then after about a day or so, I let that cure and came back, and I had to fit them to the side of the fuselage here. And I think I got it pretty close. But instead of gluing these to the outside, I'm actually going to glue these to the side of the fuselage. So it's going to look somewhat like that. Now, let's go over to the other bench and I'll show you how I'm going to do that, because it's kind of tricky. And there are like 3 different points where this mates up. Actually, 4 different points. It has to mate up to the other piece right along the edge here. It also has to mate up, obviously, on the side of the fuselage. And then this little post right here fits in, and I want to keep that because it's going to help align everything and keep everything straight. I could just cut it off, but the way this fits on there, I think you'll see that it's probably best to leave that on. So let's move over to the other bench. All right, so I've got pieces of tape here, and you'll see why I'm going to use that in a minute. And these will fit in here just like so. There's these little slots right here that this little post fits in. Now, one thing you got to keep in mind is that if you move these, see right along here at the bottom, if I move it a little bit, it spreads that gap. Well, I want to keep those gaps nice and tight. And how I've been doing that when I've been test fitting is just taking a piece of tape and getting it real snug. Because I want to make sure those are nice and tight, because I'm not going to be gluing this to this part. Go ahead and stick this up here. Make sure it's nice and tight up there. And we will do the other one on this side. Okay. So hopefully when I glue these to the side of the fuselage, I'll be able to just plug this in, and this part will not need to be glued to this part at all. All right, now I'm going to take my front part of the fuselage, where the cockpit is, and I'll plug it into these posts, plug it in down here. It's a little tricky to get in here. Now I took this in and out while I was test fitting these like 150 times, I think, trying to get the sides of the intake. Come on, you bastard. There we go. Okay, so we close that up, and now we got a nice snug fit. Okay, so what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to tighten this down to where it's nice and tight. And I'm going to come along here, and I'm going to use some my sprue goo and put it right along there and right along the top here to glue this inside wall to the side of the fuselage, and then just let it sit and cure up. Then once that's cured, I'll remove my tape and then just pull these sides off, and it should be in the exact position that I need it to be in. And then I won't have to mess with it after that. Now I am gonna use some putty and fix any seam line that I have along where it joins. Based on the reference pictures, it looks like it might be there might be some kind of like a curve on the back end of these that I'll have to take care of. But I think that will be good. And then once I get these all glued to the front part of the fuselage, when I get ready to attach this, all I have to do is just plug it in, hold these tight, and then glue around this section right here. So that's my plan, and I'm gonna make sure everything's nice and straight before I start adding my cement or my sprue goo. And then once I get that done, then I'll come in here and I'll paint the back end, and I'll use some make sure everything's nice and smooth, then paint it, and then I can mask it off and paint the rest. So that's where I'm at. I'm gonna get this together, get it all smoothed out, and take a look at it after that. All right, got it all painted, and let's take a look at it. So I pulled this out because I did actually have to extend this opening. Right along here, I just added some plastic card, had to sand and repaint it. But the reason I had to do that was because there was some light showing through it. It didn't completely join up with the bottom here. So you can see how much gap there was between the bottom piece and then my new piece right here. So I had to add a little bit of plastic card on there, and not that big of a deal, but just something that I had to do. So then there we go. That's how it's gonna look. Much better than how they had it. A little bit more realistic. So there we go. Now the next thing that I want to do is, now I off camera I did the nose, and it comes in several pieces, 2 side pieces. The nose cone's one separate piece. It just plugs in. Everything fits pretty well. And then they've got this piece up here that goes in. Now I did add a little bit more detail. I added this little plastic card here to add some rivets, and then added a panel line right along the top here, and then added some more rivets. And then I filled in a couple little divots right here that just didn't look like they were supposed to be there. I've seen some planes with them and some planes without them. Although the way they had these molded in, it really didn't look like what I saw in the actual pictures. But so I just went ahead and filled those in. I also, I'm not exactly sure what this is, but there was a seam line running right along down through here. So I just cut that all out, added some plastic card and some strips, and took care of that little doohickey right there. So all in all, I mean, the fit on this was pretty nice. Now the way that this is molded is they've got like almost like a toy, how a toy would like plug in, because they've got another lip on these little things. I just cut the lip off because what they would have you do is just plug it into here, and it would be like a snap fit. Now, I didn't really like that because I like to adjust stuff, and I like to test fit and see where my issues are going to be. And fortunately, I don't have any issues with this on here, plugging this in. So, but there is a little bit of give. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of my, I hardly ever use this, the Tamiya cement, the regular stuff. And I'm just going to apply this liberally right on the inside here. Just like so. Okay. And I will just plug this in. Just plug it in, guys. Just plug it right in there. And hold it. And then I'll probably come along with some Tamiya extra thin and just run it along that seam line right there. And then we should be good to go on this. In fact, I could probably do that right now. Make sure I'm good all the way around. Just to lock it into place. It's just going to be a matter of just tapping it. Now once you put this to me extra thin down, I don't want to apply any more pressure because I don't want to ooze it out. This is a decent panel line. And I don't want to have to like fill it in and redo it because I oozed stuff out. Now the panel lines in this thing are a little bit, probably too deep and wide. And it's a little toy-like, but that's okay. It is what it is. I think once I get it painted, it'll look okay. I mean, it is a model. Okay. All right, so that's it. Hopefully you were able to see that. That was my, kind of had it in an awkward position there. So, all right, that's it, fellas. And I'll flash up some pictures, and I will see you on the next episode. Thanks for watching.